that we are all humans, that everybody has their flaws, their developments, their strength. So therefore, always try to keep yourself healthy, physically but mentally.
Welcome everyone to WorkPod podcast. Today we have a fascinating guest. We have Melissa Riberio. Friends, very few times we get to have leaders who have checked a lot of interesting boxes that are very difficult steps for leaders to pursue. So, Melissa is a diverse candidate. She is She has been leading organization internationally. Came on board in US and and spend her career across leading multiple organizations at various levels. So it will be an interesting ride, talking about her journey and how she pursued and how she got to her C-suite role. With that, Melissa, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Vishal, and thank you for inviting me to join you.
So let's jump right to the matter. Walk us through your journey.
Yes, absolutely. So I am Brazilian, born and raised. I started, my life in Brazil. My parents, they had the opportunity to come to the United States in University of Michigan to for a part of his residency. My father and my mom to take a master's degree here, and at that time, I was able to learn English. And when went back to Brazil, it was a huge point that later on, which I'm going to get to there in a minute, it changed a lot of the perspective of my career, right? So when I was going through business school, I decided, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to take an internship program. And when I went to decide, I'm like, I'm going to work for a company that is a multinational company based out of the United States that has presence in Brazil. In my hometown, which is a 600,000 inhabitant city, it's not a large city. It's the name of the city is Londrina in the south of Brazil. Had this multinational organization and that just had a joint venture. So all the things that they needed to put from best practice in the people function, HR, right, in regards to employees. It was not in, we didn't we, they didn't have in the offices and in the organization in Brazil. And I was the only person, intern at 18 years old, who could speak and write English. So I was very fortunate because 18 years old, you're a kid, you're not even developed yet, and I had to be dealing with the C level. I had to be dealing with the headquarters. I had to be translating things from English to Portuguese, but implementing that with my team. So developing my leadership and honing my leadership skills right there. It went fantastic for 4 years, but I decided to take my second master's degree in the United States. And I told the company, I was, again, very fortunate that they were like, we're going to transfer you. And that's how my journey started here in the United States. I was transferred at first to Atlanta, Georgia, and quietly shortly after that, I made a decision. It was a manufacturing industry. Um, I wanted to go to technology because at that time I already was fascinated by the techies, right? The geeks, the nerds. I love people that are smart. I love people that are creative. They're not bound to the status quo. They want more. And I'm like, I want to go there. And I had opportunity to work for IBM. And later on, I became an executive recruiter because I wanted to go through my PhD in psychology, and I couldn't do full time, so I had to balance work. And to be an executive recruiter at that time was great because I had a role, and I got paid by whatever I closed.
Hmm.
And I was able to make my money at the same time, full time in a program. Fast forward, I had an opportunity to take a role in New York City, and I moved to New York City, to Manhattan, and a lot of things just happened because in New York City you have everything, in two steps around from you, from networking, from meet influencers, from developing your own, and hone your own skills. Um, in the first organization that I worked in New York City, it was a multinational organization, very spread in the United States, with a lot of acquisitions. And that's when the M&A started. What can we do to acquire a company? How can we do a due diligence? How can we develop, like those integration plans within organizations? I was the only female in leadership, and you're talking about DEI. So being Brazilian, a female, it's like, yes, I do check a lot of boxes. So I encountered right there for the first time, 18, 17 years ago, what was to represent a female, to represent a Latina, to represent, all my cultural, upbringing into organizations, and of course, be able to, speak and be heard in a leadership environment. And from that point on, that has been my career, right? It has been, Melissa, either the only one or the one that's going to bring, more diversity to the team, because it's important. And then later on, I was transferred as an expat to my own country through an organization at the time where Thomson Reuters, was hired by Yahoo, and I returned to the United States. Yahoo moved me around. I took global roles in California. The company before I took this role with Action, it was a larger organization. We had 9,000 employees across the globe, spread. My team was 110 HR professionals that I led. And it was a great experience, but I was in Los Angeles. I missed being in the Valley, being in the Silicon Valley, and where everything happens in a minute, and you have so much, greatness of people and ideas, and I just love this. And I wanted to take a role here in California, and I took the role as the Chief People Officer for Action 2.5 years ago. And it has been, a fantastic ride. So this is a little bit of my career so far.
It's fascinating. So let's rewind a bit. So in Brazil, right? So I'm from India, and India is known for we are very conservative when it comes to value system and all that. So getting a female leader in India is remarkable. It's hard for them, and they have to really have. So walk us through about Brazil, like what it is like to be a female leader in Brazil.
Yeah, I have a huge role model, my mother. She, her generation. I mean, imagine it was tougher than what I went through. She was a professor in university. She became a leader in the entire department of the university. Later on, she became an entrepreneur. Today, she writes book and gives lectures. So, don't. She always taught us, like, your opinion matters, and have confidence by bringing value, and it was amazing because in our we are three girls. I'm the baby of the family. We would sit down for lunch with my father, who is a neurologist to this day, 80 years old.
Wow.
In Brazil. And yeah, and I don't think he's ever going to stop. He's going to drop one day, he's going to be like, he loves being a physician. But we would talk about, like, from politics to culture to education to anything that would come up, the world. And they would instigate the three of us to talk because our opinion mattered. And you start building, a body where, of confidence when you are a little girl, right? So I was very fortunate to have, parents where they had that within them. And because it was very difficult for her to maneuver within, corporate and then environments that were only male. And, she wanted us, to be strong and to feel that they needed to develop themselves. Was it easy? I mean, Brazil is very machista, very machista. It's very, but at the same time, the females in Brazil are strong. We are known by being passionate, by being outspoken, by really really have that strength, right? But you know, no matter where you are in the world, we always have to prove more.
Hmm.
To this day, we always have to prove more. If it is there are five males and one female, and they're performing the same role, typically the female is going to work more hours, is going to do this, is going to do that, because she wants to be relevant, right? um I don't feel that way anymore, because I prove myself with my strategic thinking, and how I deploy programs, and how do I influence the C level so they take great decisions, about the company and about people, right? But I was when I started here in the United States, it was more difficult than in Brazil, because in Brazil I was so young, right? That people would be like, okay, I'm listening to you and I'm giving you opportunities, but at the same time, they were like, I'm very confused by the fact they're too young. But here in the United States, people would be like, the stigma of Brazilian. Brazil has carnival, and people all over the world think carnival is a bunch of females, almost naked, dancing, and sincerely, people would ask me, "Oh, you're from Brazil? Tell me about carnival and tell me about." It's the whole stigma of
I,
a country, right? And oh yeah, and the females, oh, the models, Giselle Bündchen from Victoria's Secret, oh, you have all those females. Like, stop that stigma, that
hmm.
bias, because not everybody comes from the same box. Carnival, it's a beautiful festival where people go to the streets. The regular, dude and dudette are not going to be, half naked in the street. They are going to just be as everybody else, enjoying themselves, being happy and dancing, right? But people would look me up and down for sure, and make comments, and like, are you an angry person because you talk with a strong voice? I'm like, no. Yeah, in fact, I'm very the opposite. I'm very pathetic. I work for people, with people. That's my job, right? So it doesn't matter where you are. It is not only Brazil, right? It's not only India. And I have been working in India, going to India, and being the lead of a function where you have a lot of male HR professionals there, and you're absolutely correct. They would rather have a male talking to them, but it is my job.
Interesting.
I will be polite, but I will need to get things done.
Interesting. So, what is your hack? So, basically, I spoke to one of the female leader, and she put it really beautifully. She said, Michelle, you know what, a story of hedgehog and fox. I said, what's the story of hedgehog and fox? And she said that in our life, either we are fox, so we are maneuvering around, monitoring, trying to find an opportunity and just take the small steps very cleverly and do things, or we could be hedgehogs. So we are really good at one thing and that one thing only, and the world sort of just, you don't care about fox, as long as you are in you have a protection given to you, and you just monetize on that. And this particular lady, so she said, many of my colleagues, so my mentor said, in our life, just be a hedgehog. So they cannot hurt you, they cannot do things. So you know your value, you know your strength, and you pursue. On the other side, I have this leader. She said, you know what? I think my job as being an entrepreneurial job. So it's pure capitalism for me. I make them money, they will keep me appreciated. I don't care if the other guy is a guy or a gal or whoever. It's a fair game. It's a fair field. If I can generate more capital than a male counterpart, and then listening to male counterpart, that's bad for them. But at least I am true to myself. So in from your vantage point, what how do you grapple this?
How do I grab, you know, how I position myself?
Yes. So
How
so
do
what's
I,
what's what's your secret? Like what keeps you going in and still breaking ceilings?
well, when you work, I've been working for over 20 years, right, in my field and in HR people. And in the beginning when I started my career, the people function was very manual, very tactical, and there was an evolution where I participated from the beginning to this point because I already had, the thought process of being strategic. How can I add value? How can I influence people? Right. So am I going to be like some females believe that they need to come across as very tough, or they're submissive, listen, and then act. I'm like, I'm a hybrid. I'm not an either or. I am the kind of individual that I need to sit down across from a CEO, no matter gender, and I need to influence the CEO to take decisions that are going to be positive so we can retain, engage employees. I need to help the CEO to be successful in their own careers. So I am the coach, or the quarterback who needs to go in front of me. So there's a little bit of the backstage where I play very well, as well as when I need to sit down with an entire organization and with the public and an audience where I have the persona that I need to bring that it's more outspoken. So I work in the hybrid. I work in a hybrid where I'm in the backstage and I'm in front, right? When I'm leading a function, I'm the one that, the person that has to be sitting with everybody and making sure that it's cohesive, what I'm saying, makes sense. So I don't have the aggressive nature because I lead people function, right? If I was in engineering, that would be different. If I was in sales, that would be different. I need to be aggressive to get things done, right? But with the people function, I should not be aggressive. I should be, I need to be somebody that it's seen as an influencer, a thought leader, where I can evolve a culture of an organization so we can retain the top performers, where we can really bring and develop the best of a human being so they can bring value to the organization. As you said, it is a cycle, it's give and take, kind of a cold way of saying that, but it's give and take. Everything, you're not going to do things for just for the heart of it. But when you are authentic and you really believe that you're doing the right thing for people, everything flourish, right? So 20 plus years of doing what I'm doing, learning and failing, and knowing that fail is part of everything, right? You pick up some tricks, in your sleeves where you can bring it up, to an entire organization and say, let's try this. But you have to have credibility with the entire leadership, no matter it's a female or a male. They need to believe that, I'm going to follow your voice. I'm going to follow your instinct. I'm going to follow your years of experience. And
Interesting.
and, and that's what it is. It's a thought leader. It is an authentic person where they come and they bring them the authentic self, and people are going to believe you, and then you're going to grow to be, whoever you want to be,
Interesting.
right?
On that, we talk about tricks or tips. So on that note, say, if you quantify your journey and you say, okay, in my journey, there's certain tricks or tips that has really helped you gain traction when it comes to um, sort of moving, keeping the goalpost moving. So can you share some of those tips or tricks that really has helped you?
Yes, yes. I think the most important one is you need to know yourself. You need to know your strength, and you need to know your areas of development. What are the areas where, I keep saying over and over again that you need to have the tip of iceberg and depth in
Mm,
certain areas. You cannot know everything in a function. You cannot, you're not superwoman, superman. You're just not.
mm,
So my biggest trick is really to hire people that are smarter than me in areas where I know I'm not going to be the expert, or I'm going to have the tip of knowledge where I know I have said that in an interview. I'm dangerously knowledgeable because I know enough that I can, curb and make decisions, right? But to do the entire development, deployment, design of a program or a plan, I need the expertise, right? So I always hire people that are personality like the opposite of me, people that come from different, again, diversity brings a lot of creativity. And, the other thing is like, I am a student of a lifetime. I'm always humbled because I want to learn what the heck is the new thing. We're going through a pandemic. Here in the United States, you feel like, oh, maybe we are seeing the end of this pandemic. But you and I come from Brazil, you come from India. That's not
Hmm.
the story right now.
Hmm.
We are not seeing the end of pandemic,
Hmm.
and how you as a leader, have to act in a time of a pandemic where we thought, that we would never go through this. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure a lot of people have known that it was about to happen one day, but from one day to the next, we had to change the entire organization, right? We had to be prepared to have tools for employees who were, from one second to the end, from one second to the next second, they were, inside an apartment, lonely because they didn't have anybody, and start having depression, having burned out, and having like, how are we going to treat all that? Well, you need to be very fast, and
Hmm.
grounded to understand, okay, what tools am I going to have here to be able to take care of the psychological safety of this human, right? um did we know this was going to happen this way? No, right? Nobody would think about that. Um, a lot of the divorce happened during the pandemic because people did
Hmm.
not, they were like, I like you for 2 hours a day. I don't
Yeah.
like you for the entire day, right? And then organizations are just the continuum of their lives, but there's a huge impact if the human being is not treated with respect. It's treated with with a with tools and ways of being healthy mentally and physically. There's no way that this person is going to be productive for an organization or bring value, because the core of a human being, it's totally unstructured. There's no structure anymore. There's no foundation. So companies cannot think that, oh yes, the value that we have, it is the human capital, but we invest zero.
Hmm.
you know you should never do that. And as a leader within this world, right, that we were going through, right, having empathy as part of who you are, it made me successful for this pandemic that we are still going through,
Yeah.
right? And taking the decisions from a people standpoint versus just the revenue. The revenue is important because without revenue there's no fee, right? So
That's true. So I think last question on the diversity sec, and thank you for helping us understand that. So if you are a diverse candidate today, or if you are a diverse wannabe leader that are watching this particular session, what would you say to them? How would they can achieve success without getting hammered by, as you rightly pointed out, the nuances on sort of being a diverse candidate, or stigma that are attached to you, and fighting that stigma and still performing, and if not overperforming, to justify why you should exist in the first place. So what would you tell to the listeners and viewers from the diversity point of view?
well, there are two things that I find it critical, right? You need to be your authentic self, right? You should not be a chameleon where everywhere you go you dress to a different persona to accommodate the organization. It's going to kill you one day if you do that over and over and over. But you have to curb some of your cultural nuances, right? Because just we were talking about like how interact female within the Indian society in India, right? It's different. So there is a level of when I'm dealing with a certain specific culture, right? The Asians too. um, I cannot. I am my authentic self. I bring, my values, my system, my passion, my flair and fun. But I have to tune my persona to be respectful towards the other culture. It's be cultural sensitive, right? So if I am, starting my career and I just got out of a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, and I'm starting for my first job, right? Um, the first thing is try to develop your sensitivity button
Mhm.
of, who is in front of you, and be able to understand the cultural nuances. The largest problems we have today, in employee relations in organizations, it's not understanding cultural nuances.
Hmm.
This country is so global, right? You in one organization, you have people from all over that have migrated to the United States, or you have, second generation, third generation, or if you are black, you came from a different culture, from a specific area of the United States, and then you're, in a respect and try to understand, put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right?
Hmm.
But don't try to change the core of who you are. The best way to develop, in a society where you don't belong because you're not from here, right? Or you have some of the biases of being a female or a male, or I'm gay, I have disability, I have, whatever, right? Is bring your authentic self, but be sensitive to who is in front of you, and try to tailor the communication so you can really, shine.
I think that's such a beautiful advice. So I have a little story to tell on that, for our listeners and viewers. So being authentic self is such a critical lesson that unfortunately many of us learn after we have gone through the tainted process of trying really hard to blend in by becoming what you are not. So when I came to US for my masters, I remember there was an Indian famous guest. He is a successful entrepreneur, opened multiple companies, and he was giving a speech. And I asked, I raised my hand to ask him a question, and I was pretending to be an American. So I was trying to make an American English. I'm from British dialect country. We follow British linguistic rules. Coming here was totally different, and I was trying really really hard. And then he said, can you say it in Indian? I said, what? Like, how can you? We are theater. Why are you saying it is nothing like Indian? So he said, can you be authentic? Can you be sort of just say, I don't mind if you say in your local language, but just be yourself. And when he was speaking in the audience, everyone was listening to him, and he was not an Americanized version of English. So then, sort of after the fact, and he said, Vishal, you know what? Many of us exhaust ourselves so much pretending to be in a different culture, then we just don't bring our own beauty to that culture. And in fact, so I met him like 15 years after this particular incident, and he said, the current diversity problem is nothing but this, that you try so hard to be inclusive in that community, that you somehow press unnecessary, and we're talking about stigmas that are sort of from where we came from. He said, just be, accept them to be natural, except don't judge them that they're from somewhere. Just have subject on the content. So I think beautifully put, Marissa, and thank you for reviving that thought.
Well, and you're welcome. And the truth of the matter is that I wasn't born in this country. I didn't do my bachelor's degree in this country. And I'm always going to have an accent. I'm always not going to be as articulate as a somebody that grew up in this culture, right? So if I had in my mind the fear of, I cannot speak like this person because they are so brilliant in how they, like they just have like the words come to them like so beautiful, put. I can't. I'm in a huge disadvantage. But if I have ingrained it in myself that, I wouldn't go anywhere. I'm like, you know what? Take it who I am, or leave it. So if I have to talk to myself, because in the beginning I struggled with that. I'm like, I'm not going to come across as, smart. But the truth of the matter is, most of the times people want to see me because I'm me.
Yeah.
They don't want to see me, a different Melissa with, like speaking like, Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
who has a law degree. I can't. I would never get there, and I'm happy and fine with that.
Interesting. So now let's talk about organization today. So, what is the state of HR function? So, can you walk us from your vantage point over your journey in this field? How has HR function grown since last 2 decades? You said you have been
Yeah.
serving that community.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I was touching the point that it used to be uh, connected with payroll, right? And in processing benefits and processing, documentation, having compliance. That was what it was before. And people, or the where they would kind of resolve the problems among employees and litigation. The bureaucracy, so many red tapes. I never thought that way. I always thought, I'm here to make a difference in people's life through their careers. And and from the get-go, I would do the tactical things, and I learned all the tactical things. But my thought was like, I'm going to be a partner. I'm going to be a partner so I can, if this individual has an aspiration to be, a vice president, what are the things that I can do personally to add value to this individual and allow them to achieve their career, right? So for coming from that, mindset, right? I evolved very fast to be strategic. But the major change that happened is it's automation, it's
Mm.
systems, right? Because if we don't need to be going through documentation or going through the details of what HR used to be, and we're freed, that means that we have the capacity to add time to think about what to do better, can we evolve, what can we grow into it, and how can we influence, right? And therefore, all those systems that are just processing everything, from payroll, from benefits, from for all the documentation for views that the employee is going to have, on top of having that access to like their own individual development, and their systems for everything today, right? um, it gives us like, okay, now I am behind the system, and I can be the one influencing what we're going to do next in the organization. For
Mm.
instance, right? um, HR as a people function, right? It was extremely important for the decision making of all the things that happened in the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic to this day, because we are the closest to know how a human is going to interact, how they're going to feel, how, because we're always talking. And good people
Mhm.
leaders, they are going to train their HR business partners to be talking to every single person at all times, to do a pulse check. Are you guys okay? How is the department? How are you feeling? Right? So we can be proactive in developing programs where we are going to have create tools, like for instance, everybody know that there was a time where everybody wanted to do something to do with their mental healthness, right? And we implemented an application that gave time for everybody to do meditation, listen to certain music, do Pilates, do core, make their bodies and their minds, like full with with the wellness, instead of sitting at home and continue working, getting to the point of burnout, or thinking about horrible things. Because in the beginning of the pandemic, we only had horrible, horrible,
Mm.
horrible, horrible, horrible things, coming all the
Mm.
time.
Mm.
Remember the days that we didn't know if a vaccine was going to be created. and that hole that was for the any person, right? So we came in and we started developing along with the C level, but coming from our standpoint, first we need to be extra communicative. Typically, who owns communication within the organization is HR. So that means that, let me tell you how we're going to talk to the employees. Let's augment, make it much more hours of communication. Let's do all hands. Let's talk through it with the employees.
Hmm.
You know, 20 years ago, it was a silence between the C level and the employees. Once in a while, they would do a town hall, right? Now it is like we have weekly touch bases. We have newsletter. We have them going and talking to the employees, having one-on-ones, having open office. So we humanize that. And that's the idea. Typically, it doesn't come from, I'm sorry, my CFO friends, but it doesn't come from them,
Yeah.
right? It comes from people that go like, you know what? I think I've done this. Let me help you to get to some ideas where we can improve, like the engagement and the, psychological safety of our organization, our employees.
So that's a fair point, and I think I want your perspective on one very interesting thought I was thinking about. So on this podcast, we had various guests, and I had two sort of futurists in the early part of our podcast, and they both are TED speakers. They both are talking about future of organizations, and one guy said, "Hey, you know what? In a future, I don't see HR." Right, so his perspective is HR function itself is like bunch of apps put together serving an organization, right? So benefits or whatever, right? So recruiting. The other is the other
And
other
the apps are going to be run by whom?
I
By a robot
so
without feelings? I
so
want to
that's
meet this guy.
so yes, so that's one guy. The second guy says people, right? So people are complicated. People, you need a people's representation, and you need a more empathetic arm. So HR needs to be, instead of more systematic, stereotypical, um, process beefed up arm, it should be more empathetical and more people side. And fortunately, or I don't know if I can judge it, but the world is moving towards the second theory, right? So we have seen HR to people, right? So CHRO to Chief People Officer. So what is your take when it comes to the future of HR? So having these two totally dystopian, two sort of polar thoughts, what do you think?
Well, first for the one piece that got me it pinched my nerve was you don't need a person, just put all these applications. Yeah, you can, of course the applications are here to elevate the people that are leading the function. So we are not going anywhere. We are more critical than ever because we are, now organizations are figuring out that, oh my God, I don't hire a mathematician. I hire a person who is a mathematician.
Hmm.
And that person has feelings. Oh my God, they have feelings. Right. So what do we do with them? I said, work is a continuation of human being and how human interact and how human feel. Right. So, I'm not saying that we are, our organization should be a family, right? But our organization should be a happy continuation of your
Hmm.
life.
Hmm.
So you can feel complete and balanced, right? So today, what are the things that I'm doing with my organization, right? We are developing programs where we can really catapult people's potential, right? So if they are in a swim lane of the individual contributor and they want to be like a principal architect, right, a fellow or something like that, what are the steps that we need to do to really take this individual to the end of their potential, right? Or if they have a little bit of the capabilities of leadership, they want to be a leader and they want to be when they see level, right? So what are the tracks that I need to put together so they can go there, right? And individually develop those programs. It's very individualized because again, we're talking about human, not
Hmm.
cows, right? So each one has its own sentiment, right? And of course, to scale something like that to an organization that has like 20,000 employees, it's a little bit complicated. But if you have the formula of how to do that, you are going to retain this employee, in the work environment that we are today, that is hybrid or remote, right? They're not going to want to jump to another company right away because, oh, I can work for a company that's based out of Europe, right? Or I can do this, I can do that. We're going to be able to say, you know what, he's going to be satisfying working for us. Stop, full front. Who is doing all this?
Mm.
It's an individual who understands the nuances of human and the human capacity and the human traits, because we hire a mathematician who is a person.
That's
Okay.
right.
So, and we want this guy, girl, lady, they, them, to be, a Nobel Prize,
Yes.
right?
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. So if you so I think last year was pretty interesting when it comes to understanding the people problem. I think we have you touched upon many of those struggles as an organization, as a worker, or as an HR leader, managing between the organization and the worker. So what do you think is the future entails with this newfound reality? And I think we talked about even before the show about the world would be slightly more virtual than it used to be a year back. So that means many of us would be seeing each other probably on the screen a lot slightly longer than what we used to. So that the whole element of those dopamine kicks that we used to get being in a co-working space is virtualized from many aspects. So many of those kicks, I'm probably getting it from somewhere else, which is again a problem for mental health. So,
Yeah.
what do you see as the future as for
Well,
organization?
so, yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking about like, and I'm going to be like in the tech space versus other industries, just because I've been working in the tech for a while.
Yeah.
So what is happening in the future, and it's happening right now, is that people are taking decisions about do I want to be hybrid, right? Do I want to be somebody that comes to the office 2-3 days a week and work from home? Okay, this is one scenario. The other scenario is I want to live in the middle of Arkansas because there is a property that I can afford, but I'm going to still want to work for organization and technology, right? And then you have the people that are still going to be like, you know what? I feel good to be away from my family and my 10 kids, and focus at work, and work be separated from home, because this blend, makes me unproductive. Companies should understand that they should not be single-minded, and I think people are realizing that, right, and creating those atmospheres. But one thing that is very important is the fact that we are driven by emotions, we are driven
Mm,
by connectivity, right? So not having the report, it's a bit of a problem, right? Because you can be, think about a group of people, my team or my C-level, right? So we have, each one has their expertise. We hire the best people to do everything. If they're not thinking as a team, they're not going to achieve high performance.
mm,
And to think as a team, you need to have similar objects, similar, you have understand your responsibility, feel that you have psychological safety with them, feel that you have that people are going to have my back. If you're not hanging out literally, right, that report of I am in engineering and you are in marketing, how are we going make things better about product release or something like that, the report is not there. So that means that we're going to be working in silos. So that is a problem. That is a problem. And that's a problem because, the best teams are the teams that work like this and not
mm,
like this for their expertise. We are going to need to have funds and budget that we are not spending in offices anymore for travel. So I believe travel is going to increase tremendously in a corporate environment where you have
mm,
meaningful days together, where you have to accomplish, strategies and, and product release and hang out as a human,
Hmm.
It's like the whole thing about like, oh, let's have a beer together for those who have, a beer, or have a, tea. It doesn't matter. That off hours, you're gonna chit chat with people about, hey, how's your kids? How is your significant other? How is, the dog? Because everybody has a pet today, right? So you need the two things. You need to have the face to face. They're just not going to be the day to day. The day to day, yes, the meetings are going to be virtual. We're going to still be using Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, whatever, and those platforms have to be better and better and better, for interface and user experience. But we are going to need to devote budget for interactivity, once a quarter or something like that.
I think so. One thing pretty fascinating, by the way. So I was talking to one of the HR leaders in India managing a large organization, and he was making a joke. So he was saying that, Vishal, you know what? 20 years back, if you talk about HR, so there was a stigma that HR is just nothing but organized parties, right? So we see them organized parties, and then
By the way, I hate events.
so so
I
the,
do not. I do not. I don't even. I only attend.
so
Okay. So,
so
but that's fine.
so and he was just joking, right? So what he would
Of
say, he
course
was
it is.
so he was trying to say, so we were so people used to mock us that HR is nothing but they're just a bunch of people trying to organize parties and whatever, right? And everyone hate parties, HR parties. So then he said, then the mid 20 last 20 30 years came when HR is transforming the organization. It's preparing the organization for future. It's pretty techy. That stigma is now fading away. But he said after pandemic, how I would see HR is that people would now beg us to organize those parties because everyone is so bugged up, it's so exhausted. I said that's an interesting take. So it was just
Yeah.
on
But
your thought.
there are platforms that help. By the way, because so think about this: like we are a global organization. We have people, in Australia, in India, in different countries in Europe, and here in the United States. So how to do things like that, people that were in offices, how to do that. There is a tactical problem, logistical
Hmm.
problem, which
Hmm.
is, how do you, create budget
Hmm.
logistically. So there
Hmm.
are platforms that, it's considered like rewards for or engagement, where the money is, sent out to, we host, HR host the budget for engagement, but it is passed on to a individual where they can, get together in a, a Starbucks, in China, and with the team, and have those interactivities, right? Because that has to be in place. There's more, it's, like all this, virtual world that we have today, right? Events is going to be an important thing,
Hmm.
but not the party thing, because a party has to be a
No,
committee representative of different functions.
yes, yes. So he was just, so he was joking. So he was just,
I know.
so but it was hilarious. So now let's come on a slightly fun part of the conversation. So we call it rapid fire. So in that, how that works is I say you a word or probably a small sentence, and you tell me what comes to your mind, a sentence or two, just to give you what you're
Also,
thinking.
not like one word, two words. You want like a thought.
Yeah,
Okay.
thought or word, whichever, like just it's totally up to you, but the idea is to be like quick. Okay, so should we start? So future of work.
Concerning, a challenge, but absolutely fun.
Technology.
Technology is empowering all of us to do a better job.
Leadership.
Empathy, gravitas, and creativity.
Remote work.
Don't forget, we are humans.
Equity.
Equity. We are not there yet. We're still fighting.
Diversity.
It's a must. Look at the two of us.
Legislature.
We all need a little bit of compliance so we don't swim in different lanes and get ourselves in trouble.
Jobs of future.
people that can develop, make the connectivity between mental and physical.
Future of learning.
Ex- Future of learning for me, it's a different thing. It is people understanding that there is an individual way of learning, so therefore we need to have different tools for different audiences.
Interesting.
It can be experiential, and it can be books. It can be whatever it is. But people should continue learning. But my learning is different than your learning, and companies have to understand that.
That's a amazing thought. So things that keep you up at night.
The pandemic today, I still have my employees, my family in countries where it's still surging, and I know here in the United States we are seeing the end of it, but in other countries we're still with the eyes very open.
Awesome. Now let's spend few minutes on your journey, and thank you for playing rapid fire with us. So we ask all of our guests to talk about some qualities that has helped them stay what they are, or that has really contributed to the success. What are some qualities that has helped you become what you have become?
A deep interest in human being. That's why I studied psychology, not to be a therapist because I would be a terrible therapist, but because I always thought that there are so many nuances into individuals, and how can I better things. So empathy. I can absolutely, because of my journey, I can put myself in people's shoes most of the time. There are sometimes people need to, warn me. Humble, I know that I'm not the smartest person. So therefore, let me listen to what you have to say, and let's get into a conclusion how we can do better, right? I like to have fun. I like to laugh. And because of my accent, because I don't know things, sometimes I say things that are inappropriate and they just don't match with anything. People laugh a lot, and I'm going like, I'm not trying to be funny, but people just crack up. And I'm fine with that. Like a little bit of self-deprecation brings humanity to the
Hmm.
table.
That's a fair point. And on your psychology journey, I was thinking about this. So I think I really want to have you back at some point again and talk about an HR leader and psychology, because I think the whole pandemic is just it just increased the whole new branch of science that you already have gone through, how to lead an organization from that template. So I definitely would love to have you back at some point on talking about that.
That'll be my pleasure.
So last but not the least, if you want our guest listeners and viewers to take away something from this conversation, what would that be? Like, what would be your parting thought?
Well, I've been, pretty consistent with the theme, right? That we are not robots. I don't hire robots. I don't work with robots, right? That some people do, but I'm sure there's a human behind that that is developing that robot. Um, and so for me is, remember that we are all humans, that everybody has their flaws, their developments, their, strength. So therefore, always try to keep yourself healthy, physically, but mentally, so you can bring your best self. Don't ever forget, right? When you are in an airplane, the flight attendant says, you breathe first and then you help others. You cannot do for anybody or for a product or if you're not mentally healthy and physically healthy. So take care of yourself, and not only your physical body, but your mind and soul.
With that, thank you, Melissa. So to our listeners and viewers, so very few times I actually got to meet people who are actually working in serving their community, making it better. And Marisa, I think you're always source of inspiration to us and me especially. Of You're always there to support us. You're always there to help the community. You're always there to help other leaders. So thank you for all you are doing, and you're always welcome back on the podcast, and privileged to have you on the show.
Well, thank you, Vishal. It was a fun hour. I'm thrilled to have had this experience with you. And, for the viewers, please reach out to me through LinkedIn and let's connect if you ever want to have some chat about, your future career or anything whatsoever. My purpose in the world, it is to do best that I can for human and whatever way I can. And it has been my work, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you, Vishal.
Thank you,
Have a
Melissa.
wonderful day.
You too.